Reddit, what family secret do you know that you shouldn't or wish you didn't know? Maybe NSFW. My dad had 2 brothers and a sister. They were all molested by their dad, my grandfather. My uncle killed himself because of this. My dad was caught molesting me by my mom and he killed himself. This is the first time I have actually ever typed this. Feel a bit better. Oh. I am afraid to have kids of my own because of the molesty family history, but can't explain this to my wife who is desperate to have children. Do I win the Reddit award for most fricked up? My grandfather, a native South Korean, fought in World War II. Sometime in the 1940s, when Japanese were occupying Korea. My grandfather took a knife and stabbed an unsuspecting Japanese soldier in the back. There was no real gore. So my grandfather took a picture of him and the dead soldier in sort of a buddy pose. Fast forward to 2008. By now, most of my family had moved to America, where I was born, and we lived in a more rural part of New York. When my grandfather died that year, all the neighbors came by, all 10 of them, and had a wake for him. We didn't have a lot of pictures of my grandfather. So my mother accidentally put up the picture of my grandfather and the dead soldiers. When my Japanese neighbors were saying their condolences, my neighbor's grandmother saw the picture. He says, "Wait. That's my husband. He disappeared in Korea." Because my grandfather and the Japanese soldier looked like friends. No one noticed he was dead. After a few minutes, my dad, who was preoccupied elsewhere, came over and blatantly said, double quote, "This is the picture of father and the Japanese soldier he killed in the 1940s. I was a mistake. No matter what I accomplish in life, it won't matter to them. They only had me because of my mother's religion. Once I defected from the religion, I was no longer good enough for them. Heard it through the window as I was leaving for a friend's house. I am their biggest disappointment and failure. Equals. Que sera sera. Fixed by popular demand. Comma, I will meet a nice, beautiful girl. Eventually. I will have my home, my own family, and my own version of acceptance." I found a suicide note on my dad's phone about a year ago. This is something you should talk about, not something you should pretend didn't happen. My paternal grandfather had a secret family we didn't find out about until they showed up at his funeral demanding an inheritance and making a huge scene. The look on my poor grandma's face. I'll never forget it. The man she had loved since she was 16, whom she'd been married to for 50 plus years, had just died a very agonizing and slow death from cancer, and she was confronted with his infidelity at his funeral in front of her children, grandchildren and friends. My sister married her husband a few years ago, so he is now family. His brother up-head and killed his boss's wife, then murdered his boss when he showed up home. He was put to death. His other brother shot himself in the head. The mom is a total wretch as well. I am pretty positive she was off doing drugs while he was a kid alone. And I'm pretty sure he was sexually abused. My sister has donated her eggs a few times to families who can't conceive. She now has 3 biological children running around somewhere in the world. She won't be able to meet them until they turn 18. And only if they decide to contact her. My parents have no idea that they have been grandparents for almost 5 years now. My great uncle died in the worst way possible because he was afraid of my family. Our extended family is very southern and conservative, and also happen to be huge bigots. It's all they know. He lived with depression and alcoholism as a closeted homosexual until he moved to a different state and became somewhat of a recluse, which my family just claims is what he wanted. His partner died in the beginning stages of HIV of unrelated causes, and he died alone of AIDS. Nobody took care of him. He says me right off. I was a kid. Wasn't even that long ago. And that's just how some families are capable of treating each other. Now many years ago, when I was 23, I was married to a widow. This widow had a grown-up daughter who had red hair, and my father fell in love with her and they got married. This made my dad my son-in-law and my daughter was my mother. To complicate the matter, I soon became the father of a bouncing baby boy. He then became a brother-in-law to dad and so became my uncle, which also made him the brother of the widow's grown-up daughter who was also my stepmother. Dad's wife then had a son and he became my grandchild, for he was my daughter's son. My wife is now my mother's mother and my grandmother. 2. Now if my wife is my grandmother, then I'm her grandchild. As husband of my grandmother, I am my own grandpa. Well, this is less crazy than that. But my mother and aunt, her oldest sister, have always gotten nauseous whenever Pink Floyd is playing. This had gone unexplained for the first 13 years of my life. Until my dad, now divorced, and I were joking about it and he made an offhand comment about not asking my mom why. So of course, I asked my mom why. After badgering her for perhaps a week to her gradual discomfort, she explains that my grandparents, her parents, used to breed dogs and traveled across the country to dog shows. They'd bring their 3 girls, and mostly the children were left unattended at these dog shows. My mom expressed anger and hurt at such irresponsible parenting on their part, and then dropped this bomb. Her and my oldest aunt think that their sister, my other aunt, was molested at one of these conventions while Pink Floyd was playing. They played popular music at these sort of things, so it's not unlikely. My mom says that her sister denies it and doesn't remember a thing, but the fact that her and my other aunt get physically sick at hearing Pink Floyd gives the story some weight. TL. Doctor, my aunt was molested at a dog show and now my mother gets sick when she hears Pink Floyd. My grandmother was 14 and my grandfather was 18, I think, when she got pregnant with my uncle. He was born shortly after her 15th birthday, and my mom was born a year later. Anyway, my grandmother's father shot himself in the head in the basement after finding out his daughter was pregnant. Apparently, when someone blows their brains out in your basement I haven't had to look into this. Thankfully, no cleanup provided by the police. So my grandfather had to clean his pregnant 14-year-old girlfriend's father's brains off the walls. He has never spoken about it. Posted this a few weeks ago, but it applies. A few weekends ago, I was using my uncle's iPad during a graduation party. I was asking him about a bunch of apps and if he had specific apps like Yelp or Urban Spoon. He assured me that he had both apps and invited me to use them on his iPad. I opened Yelp and apparently it saves the most recent search in case you accidentally close the app. The most recent search on my uncle's Yelp app was gay bars in Cleveland. My uncle is 45 years old and has been single for as long as I can remember. With the exceptions of me and my uncle, my family is conservative and very Christian. I haven't said anything to him about it and I'm not sure if I ever will. All I know is that I love my uncle and would support him if he ever tells me anything. Throwaway account. I don't know the story too well as my father only once mentioned it in passing. Apparently my grandfather had a brother, didn't even know that. The reason I did not know of him is because he was sentenced to death in the 40s or so. He evidently robbed then murdered Harry Truman's secretary, before Truman was president. That's all I know. And just about all I'd like to know. My uncle killed someone in Ireland during the Troubles. He was from Northern Ireland and killed a Republican in a premeditated murder around 40 years ago. He spent his time in jail and consequently played a large part in the peace process. I knew him for 10-15 years before I found out, and I'm glad it took me so long. I made my impressions of him before I found out a life-altering fact. My opinions haven't changed of him because of what I found out. My aunt was raised by someone named Bunny and had a brother, Michael. Her whole life she thought Michael was her brother, and they acted like brother and sister. When Bunny died, my aunt found out the truth that Michael was actually her father and had her when he was 13 or so. So Bunny took her and raised her as her own. Technically, Bunny never adopted my aunt because she wanted her to be able to decide when she was older whether she wanted to be Michael's daughter or Bunny's daughter. WTF. Edit. Spelling. My sister cheated on her husband with the principal of the school she taught at. Then she moved to another school and had an affair with that school's principal. They are both friends and neither know about each other. And she still works with one of them. I found out my parents were swingers when I was about 13. My mom was on the family computer, which was in this little nook in the kitchen, and I went over to talk to her. And she was on adultfriendfinder.com. She quickly closed the window when I approached her, but the site's logo stuck in my head. I logged onto her account one night when they were out and read through her profile and messages. Then I looked through her emails. It all made sense now. They recently started going out every weekend. Had new friends over all the time and were generally being sneakier. My dad's email was riddled with messages and photos from women. 2. A quick survey through their drawers in their bedroom one night led to me finding a ton of toys and porn DVDs. I mean dildos, anal beads, all sorts of lube, this weird glove with vibrating fingers, the whole lot. I looked through their stuff on a regular basis when they were out. I can't tell you how many naked photos I saw of both my parents. I didn't look at them cause I thought they were hot or anything. It was just interesting in a big brother sense. It didn't even faze me after a while. This went on for years. Until they divorced when I was 18. My grandmother on my dad's side was an extreme paranoid schizophrenic and tries to kill herself weekly. I'm not sure if she's alive today because I don't speak to that side of the family. But my dad was a bit of a crazy guy and I'm worried one day it might strike me. Open bracket. My mom has told everyone in the family that my half-brother was the product of a RP torture scenario from her adolescence. When my brother got married, his wife did some investigating and found that this was not the case. Found out my mother's side of the family was Clan Campbell when my sister dated a Scottish guy and he asked which clan. Mum had told her she descended from Scots. She replied Clan Campbell and he got really pissed. Turns out my clan were some of the worst rapists, pillagers and thieves in history. Some Scots are still sore over it. Stroke. One of my uncles put a video camera in his household bathroom and taped his wife and his daughter while they showered or used the bathroom. They found out. I'm not sure how long it took. The wife divorced him and his daughter, my cousin, left and married a guy from the Marines really soon after. My dad and mom started their relationship as cheating on their spouses. On Christmas morning, my dad would tell his wife that he was getting some milk, then call my mother from a phone booth. I was raised with my older, severely learning disabled half-sister, and she would scream at my folks daily that my mother stole my father from her mother, throwing tea and all that. I was told that her mother was a crazy bitter alcoholic who lied to her to get at my parents. I learned that she was a right crazy bitter alcoholic when my mom came clean to my full sister a few years ago. My folks are still married. Weird. I was also an accident. But that's a big ol' what of frick your purpose and intent.